Community Forum is sponsored by the Easton Grange 196 and a friend of Yardley Wood Rink and the Easton Lions Club.
There's a storm across the valley, the clouds are rolling in. The afternoon is heavy on your shoulders. There's a truck out on the 4-lane, a mile or more away. The whining of his wheels just makes it colder.
Welcome to Community Forum. Today is February 7th, 2024, and my name is Priscilla Almquist Olsen, your host of Community Forum, and today I welcome two guests, Kathy Dionne, who is the manager of the Ames Shovelworks apartments, and one of her tenants, our illustrious and well-known Bill Ames. And welcome to the show today, Kathy and Bill.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. All right, so we're going to get started. Kathy's going to tell us what are the offerings at the Ames Shovelworks, and then we're going to get into a little bit of history from Bill.
Thank you. Ames Shovelworks is a market-priced and affordable-priced unit apartments. There are 113 units. There are 9 buildings, and it offers unique apartments for the town of Easton for all price ranges, affordable and market.
Yeah, and so we, and there are different configurations, I believe, of the apartments, depending on the configurations and size of the buildings. So before we go any further, maybe we should get a little bit of history here, Bill. So tell us, what are these Ames Shovelworks apartments? Where do they have their origin? What was the year? And of course, you are a descendant of the founder. So take it away.
Well, Priscilla, it's a pleasure to be here on your show. Thank you, Kathy. As a resident of the Shovelworks apartments, I have great respect for Kathy and her predecessors and what they've done to make it a totally delightful place to live. I mean, there's a lot of people who come in for 2 or 3 years. You know, they've sold their house and they move in, and they all sort of have to leave, but they get reluctant to leave because there's sort of a sense of community. But anyhow, you can see up in the back there. That is the old Ames and Sons Shovelworks, and that was founded when old Oliver Ames, as we call him, came to town in 1802 and built it up to quite a large operation. And it was owned by a fellow who was a local businessman after it was sold in 1952, because the Shovelworks moved down south to Parkersburg, Virginia. So that's where they shut down the shops here. And Arnold Tophius, he was the fellow who bought that whole complex in the 50s. And Arnold eventually, he had clients in there like Liberty Mutual and whatever, who were the data processing, and they had trucking companies with little depots and stuff like that. So long story short, because I know we want to get back to Kathy talking about the complex in more detail, but the Turner brothers bought it from Arnold about 15 years ago, and that began the saga of getting them fixed up and looking so great that they are now. It was very difficult. A lot of people helped out. Could have gone off the rails. That the Turners, their business model included either tearing it down or putting another whole level on the building. In other words, raising the roof, putting another thing like that. It was pretty unrealistic, I think, in hindsight. But and so all was well at end. Beacon Properties came. They sold it to Beacon Properties. Beacon Properties was helped by the town Community Preservation Act funds, and so on and so forth. So the gala opening day was probably in 2014. We have I did a nice video, if I do say so myself.
Okay, and but what you're leaving out, Bill, is all the work that we did to save it,
Yeah.
right? I mean that
No,
was
no, we can get into that now, but that's the overview.
yes, okay. And your brother David was chairman of the Friends of the Ames Shovelworks, and you and I and Gloria Freitas Steininger and Joan Lundgren and who else?
My brother Fred,
And Fred.
was very instrumental.
Yes.
Because he was the one that got that I forget his last name.
Something Ham.
Yeah, from Cambridge, and he was
Yes.
an architect and a lawyer.
Right.
And he was the guy that came out, and he basically, we had a meeting in the ground floor of the Oaks Ames Hall. I was well attended. The selectmen were there, and everybody. And he said, "You can do this. You can get this into your hands." And he cited examples around the country where towns had all gotten together. A town had gotten together and made sure it got in good hands, because everybody was very pessimistic about ever, because they were going to have to be torn down, which of course was virtually impossible because of the historic preservation issues. It would have been very controversial. But thanks to Colleen Corona, who was one of the real heroes of this operation, she was the chairwoman of the select board, if I got that right. And she was like a tiger the whole time, like that tiger right there. No question. She earned it. And she got the developer and got Brian Joyce and all that people involved to help out.
Right. And David, your brother, assembled a wonderful committee. And as you say, your brother Freddie, he was really instrumental. He pushed it. And lots of information sessions he started. And yeah.
David created that group, which was essentially to raise money.
Right.
To the seed money for the seed money.
And and Esther, God rest her, Esther Ames, she opened the Langwater estate to the public. We sold tickets, so it was the tour of the Langwater mansion and the gatehouse. And Joan Lundgren and I we were in charge of the refreshments, and Joan got free wine. She got free food.
Yeah,
what was left? She's very Joan's so resourceful, and now she's on the Centennial Committee. So and she's also was in charge this Saturday. They're having the disco dance at the Oaks Ames Memorial Hall with one of the top bands in Boston, disco bands, and she's done all the refreshments. So let me tell you,
Joan is a terrific. But I would put a plug in for my mother too, who wrote quite a handsome check.
She did. And so when we had raised a lot of thousands of dollars to pay the lawyers, architects, economics guys, and so forth. And so your mother, Elizabeth Ames, she stepped in and said, "No, I'm paying, and you can give all that money to the Historical Society." And that's what happened.
Right. So she got a deduction through that.
She got a charitable deduction. Of course she did. That's what the IRS permits and encourages. Yeah. So Kathy, how long have you been there?
I came on board with Beacon Communities and Ames Shovelworks in June of 2021.
I see. Okay. And before that, you must have had experience doing this.
I did. I worked for a couple different companies. I've been in property management for about 7 years now. Prior to that, I was in retail bank management for about 20 years.
Oh my goodness. Yep. Okay, so you are a management gal from the get-go.
I'm also a retired hairstylist, and I also worked for Sephora and Bare Minerals, and I did makeup as well.
My goodness. Well, I can see from your hair.
Well, tell us about your hobby.
My hobby, I sing karaoke.
Do you?
I do. So I love to sing old songs from the 50s, 60s, Patsy Cline, Etta James.
Oh,
love it.
How about Stand By Your Man? Can you do that one?
Probably.
Stand by your man.
I would need to practice first.
Okay.
Well, Bill.
Something I should be thinking about.
So here she is, not a woman of our generation, but singing our generation songs and loving it. Well, thank you, Kathy.
That's what I grew up with my parents. It's what my parents listened to.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, now we're being her parents. Uh-oh.
No.
But Kathy does a great job. We've had a poop problem at the Ames Shovelworks.
Really, Bill?
Yeah, this is more than they need to know, I'm sure.
It
But
is.
every place.
We didn't want to discuss this.
Right. But now that it's on the table, but it's been resolved.
Thanks to Kathy's good management.
Thanks to Kathy's good management, we have not had to go get the samples and send it to the lab. Right? Did we ever do that?
No.
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 So that
We didn't have to.
That was a nuclear option.
Oh boy. So there have been ups and downs, and
Yeah,
but mostly
every place
ups.
has that problem.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course. And
Kathy has wonderful barbecues periodically, and breakfast. You had a breakfast for Valentine's Day or something? Or?
I'm a huge believer in bringing forth community within the property, and it helps with resident retention. And everyone is so busy that it helps everybody to get to know each other.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a good time.
that's good. And, it helps people to help each other too.
Yeah.
Because in times of stress or challenges, there are a lot of people then can come to someone's rescue too, when they know them. That's great. Very few places, I believe, do such things. So, Bill, no wonder you're such a happy camper.
I am very happy. Originally, I had an apartment, was across the hall from where I am now. And had a big mezzanine level. But I'm just a single guy, and it was like, it's wonderful for two or three people. But for me, it was sort of like living in a basketball court, because you're looking up like that, sort of banging around. But it was a wonderful location right at the end of the building on Main Street, so you could see
right across from the library.
Right across from the library.
So
Absolutely.
what was the original building, Bill? That original.
Well, that was called that's Building 4. Which I guess I can get up and look at this here. So this is the where are we here? So this is the long building. I think this is the building here. This is what they call the long shop. Kathy's office is down in here, and it was sort of an L-shaped. I have to get on the other side here. I can't really see it. Yeah, that's the long shop. This is sort of dated a little bit, but that's Kathy's office is there. My apartment is somewhere here. I think don't you think, Kathy, there's a wing, or am I looking at it totally wrong? That's where the parking.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
The garage was built after.
Yeah, the garage. So there was a long building with a big metal roof in here, and that's what the garage sort of mimics.
Yep.
But this is the long shop, and that's where wood would go in, metal would go in, labels would go in, all here, and then out would come a shovel of some sort out the other end. That's why they called it the long shop. And all these buildings here basically created power, repaired machinery, stored wood, cut the wood, and all this stuff. Handle shop is where the Boyarsons live right now.
And what Oliver was it Oliver, or was it his son Oakes and sons Oakes and Oliver, who fashioned an assembly line long before Mr. Ford got credit for it, right? As you said, the raw materials came in one door of the long house, and a finished shovel came out the other door.
Right, and all these other buildings supported that basic process. And an attic, there was a big attic on this Building 4, which I'm in, and that's where they stored. If you see the great old pictures, great stacks of shovels were there, and they were getting ready to be shipped out on the train.
Was that closest to the depot?
Yeah, well,
building?
here's the train tracks right here. So, so they would be up there, and then they'd be carried down, obviously, to a train in the days when they had trains. In the old days, they had ox carts.
Right.
That's when they were here on the island. This is the island, just while we're on the subject, this is the Shovel Shop Pond, Priscilla, where you and I used to skate in the winter.
Oh,
Remember when we were teenagers?
Yep.
And so this is the island here, and this is where Oliver Ames first came in 1803, because there was some sort of shop there for the Leonard family owned it. I forget what they did, but anyhow, there was a dam and a couple of buildings, and that's all Oliver Ames needed, because he knew all about shovel making when he got there at age 20. Anyway, so my brother Fred, who's been very instrumental in all this, that's his house there somewhere. So here's the sluice. So this was the water powered thing. But at any rate, so there was a fire in 1852.
Mm-hmm.
All this burned. Someone tipped over something, but it was a big silver lining because they knew the business had been so good because of the gold rush and everything that they were straining for capacity. So that meant they had to go over and they had to build these buildings.
Okay, so we should let people know that the buildings in 1852 that burned, they were all wooden buildings, not
Right.
the current buildings.
Right. These are all wooden. So that's one of the reasons, obviously, they built stone.
And it was granite, right?
Is it granite? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense when you think about it. But so really, the fire was nobody got hurt, fortunately. But it was a blessing in the sense that it forced them to make the decision that they knew they had to make.
Did the Ames family lose a lot of wooden domiciles?
I don't think so. Well, I'm sure they lost a couple.
Yeah.
Well, who knows? Maybe it was done in the middle of the night and someone just happened to kick over a lantern. You know, these things happen.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it was an insurance fire. I don't know. But either way, nobody got hurt, and it was a tremendous raison d'etre, as they say, reason to do this.
So our current buildings come from 1852 or 3?
You're right. That's when this started. Obviously, it was just a couple of these. Then they just kept building, because then along came the railroads and the Civil War, all this stuff. And they supplied 60% of the world's shovels.
Right. And that was that during the
developed world. Shovels.
Right. Was that in the the 80s?
Yeah, 1880s.
1880s, yeah.
Because they were all geared up because of the Civil War, because they had to supply shovels, big contracts with the government.
Right.
So the Civil War is over. So what are you going to do now?
Right.
But fortunately, that's when the huge demand came for the railroads and the canals and everything. So
and
perfect.
Oakes Ames, who was old Oliver's son, was a congressman and a good friend of Abe Lincoln's,
right.
our president. And Abe said, Oakes, we got to build a transcontinental railroad right across the country. And so Oakes said, okay. And of course, we all know whose shovels were used to make that railroad happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so they got a return on their investment.
Certainly did.
which was good because it was a very, as we all know, it was very stressful.
Yeah,
maybe they made a lot of money, maybe they didn't, but
so we don't have Forbes to tell us, but what years were the Ameses the wealthiest family in America?
Well, I don't know if we were the wealthiest family in America.
Yes, you were.
Well,
but I don't know the date.
Let's assume you're right. But well, it was 1880s, 1890s,
right?
That sort of thing, because these Shovelworks threw off a tremendous amount of cash. Because it was, unlike the textiles of Lowell, these huge buildings, but that was very labor intensive. Whereas making shovels was not so labor intensive. I mean, they had like 400 or 500 employees in there, and they made 60% of the world's shovels. So it was not labor intensive. And so once you got up, you didn't have to keep adding employees all the time to
well, I want to thank you for one thing. I never knew which building my grandfather and my great-grandfather worked in.
Yeah.
So it must have been the long shop because, at least with my grandfather, my mother's father, he was making shovels, so he had to be part of that assembly line.
Yeah.
So, Kathy, how do you, you know the rich history. I mean, you've heard it from Bill, you've read about it, you appreciate it. You have wonderful, wonderful portraits and photos lining the hallway in the building that your office is in. And you have some paintings by Eric Lothrop and so forth. So what does all this mean to you? How does it enhance your job, for example?
I love that I'm part of the history of the town, and I'm able to provide that to my residents. While the property does not offer really any amenities, you are living in a piece of history. So that's really how we market it. And people love it. A lot of people, they come either between their buying a home and selling a home, and they're in interim, and we also have long-term residents like Bill. So It's a beautiful property. We do have the original shovels that were found in Building 5, which was the storage building, on display in the leasing office, that were originally sent to the Historical Society. And then when they built the property, they brought them in and they're now on display.
Wonderful. And of course, Bill, there's a totally complete, amazing display at Stonehill College, right?
Yeah, right. The archives, shovel archives, absolutely.
I've never seen so many shovels. And the other interesting thing is the type of shovels. There's every possible kind of shovel. So they weren't just making one or two models. They were making shovels for every task.
Well, I think that's the great insight when you visit the shovel collection. And because I think most people think, well, there's a earth shovel and a snow shovel and whatever other shovel. But when you go in there, you sort of get it as to why they were so successful, because they decided, and there's scores of different types of shovels.
Mm-hmm. And do you know anything about who the shovel designers were back then?
No. You mean the aesthetic type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, who designed the shovels?
I don't know. I don't know if they. Well, I'm sure they had a couple of people in there who,
Yeah. Well, that's your homework assignment. So, Kathy, it's apparent that you really love your job, and so from what Bill said, all those wonderful activities that you create for people's enjoyment and community gathering, it really enhances the atmosphere of the place. And there must be walls that are exposed in the apartments too, so they can see the granite, right?
Yes, especially in our townhomes. In one of the townhomes in Building 4 that's currently occupied, there's an entire wall with built-in shelving that's all the granite, and it has goes into the hallway, and it embraces the whole hallway, and it's also in the leasing office as you exit to go into the courtyard as well.
Uh-huh.
And there's still the bolts where the doors used to be. They're still in the granite. So.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And what about the lofts? Quite a few of the apartments have lofts, right?
Most of our apartments are lofts, and it depends on which building you're in. They're all very unique, but there are exposed wood beams within the lofts or silver metal beams.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So you have a real sense as a tenant of the history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Bill, it really is a blessing that these buildings were saved. And of course, they're now on the National Historic Preservation. What is that site?
Ledger. Well, there's a National Historic building. There's two classes.
Oh, okay.
One is the sort of tilts towards the Monticello type, very valuable, and the other is just things we have to preserve type of things, because they're,
And this is a have to preserve.
Yeah, I think so. But the library, because of the Richardson thing, is on the, is one of the key buildings that they want to preserve. So.
Oaks Ames Memorial Hall too?
Of course.
Of course. We are so blessed to have the Ames family who really didn't have to think about beautifying the town with the buildings created by Henry Hobson Richardson, who of course was a most preeminent architect of the 1870s, but also Lafarge windows in the Unity Church, for example. When you think about Anna Ames and how she supplied she created the band, the Oliver Ames Band, and provided
paid for the
uniforms and music and the instructors.
Lessons, yeah.
And lessons, yeah.
Don't forget Blanche.
No, and Blanche, oh my gosh. And Blanche now, of course, we've honored Blanche by having the new elementary school named after her, the Blanche Ames Elementary School. And Blanche was one of my heroes because she was a feminist, a suffragette, and a wonderful portrait artist, and she did these fabulous cartoons that were published, egging on all those men and some women who opposed the right of women to have the vote. She was so multi-talented.
Well, the artistic thing was crucial to what she could do, because she could get articles published or whatever. It's just she could send cartoons in, and she was an extremely clever, good artist. No question about that. So that was key to Blanche's success, was the fact that she could get publicity.
Right, and so she was a great strategist in that regard.
Yeah, and she was a good golfer. Could play tennis. She was sort of a Renaissance type person. You know, she wasn't all business all day.
Yeah,
you know, she was. They said good fun. You know.
But she also was an inventor, something I've learned recently.
Yeah.
And she actually didn't like the architectural plans for the mansion on Borderland, so she decided to scrap them and redo and do everything herself.
Yeah, the architect had some Gothic thing with, big this and a huge this and like that. She thought that was sort of ridiculous for out in the middle of the woods.
So, and then this Mary Ames Frothingham, who provided Christmas programs and parties for us grammar school kids.
But Priscilla, I think the most amazing part of the whole story is a sense of community. Mm-hmm. Your family was Swedes. They had Irish. They had, help me,
Portuguese.
Scottish, Portuguese, all different nationalities, because they were coming to here to the New World to make their fortune or their family have a family.
Now, my Aunt Agnes would say, when she was growing up, there were only 5,000 people, and she said half were Swedes, half were Irish, Portuguese families, a couple dozen, and 2 Italian families, Giordano and
is that right?
And the guy who helped me out. He would bust all the kids into the
Matrano.
Thank you. Yep, Paul Matrano. So, and it was a sense of community, and I think we all owe the Ames family, who helped get us a start in the new world.
Yeah.
And look what's happened. My grandfather was a laborer and made shovels, but he was also on the first board of directors of the Bank of Easton.
Yeah.
So he was respected and quite a...
Well, with a sense of teamwork, there's a lot of sort of good vibes you get, even if you're just shoveling coal into the furnace.
But we all remember, I think we all remember the debt that we owe to the Ames family, because it started many of our family's journey to in America to greater heights. And what is your message to people who might be considering? First of all, they should come over and knock on your door, and you'd be happy to give them a tour, right?
Absolutely.
But what would be your message to say, come in and live with us? How would you? What's your pitch?
Well, Ames Shovelworks, all of the apartment layouts are so unique. You feel like you're living in almost like a castle when you're walking through the courtyard, with all the natural stone and the plush lawn in the summer and spring and summer. And you're really living in a part of history. I offer resident events in the Long Shop Lounge. There's a secured mailroom where you can have all your packages that you get delivered from Amazon. And and you get me and my team. I call them the Shovel Crew. We're here to help, and we want to make sure that your apartment feels warm, inviting, and you're comfortable. Mm-hmm. And come on by.
Okay, and there are different levels of payment too, aren't there, in terms of the rental fees?
There's standard security deposit and prorated first month's rent. It just all depends.
Yeah. So viewers, check it out. I want to thank Bill Ames, tenant of the Ames Shovelworks, and Kathy Dionne, who is the manager extraordinaire there, as you can see. Okay, that's all for now. Until next time, Priscilla Almquist Olsen, bidding you farewell and be well.
Community Forum is sponsored by the Easton Grange 196 and a friend of Yardley Wood Rink and the Easton Lions Club.